Bill Connelly joining us. Always great. He stirs it up. Very controversial, even when he's not trying to be. He's a numbers cruncher. He analyzes things. Bill, good to have you on. How are you going to upset this audience today?
I don't really know. I feel like that from an SEC East standpoint, my preview is up, and it seems pretty straightforward to me. But we find some hornets' nest sometimes.
Well, let's look at it. You looked at the SEC East, which most people just shrug their shoulders and go, I mean, what's there to look at? It's already done, right? What did you find as you crunched the numbers?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to look at this and see a situation where Florida doesn't become a bad team, but takes a step backwards with what they lost offensively, opens the door pretty wide for Georgia to take advantage. And it's an interesting race for third place, but there seems like there's a humongous gap between the top two and everybody else, and we'll see exactly how that plays out.
Well, let's start with the Dogs. And Georgia fans always are nervous because of the history. It's been a few years since the last national title. Not to make them uncomfortable here on this early August day, but what could go wrong for the Dogs?
Well, I mean, the most straightforward thing is that, we find out that what we saw from JT Daniels last year was only a 4-game sample. He torched 3 pretty iffy defenses and struggled, made some mistakes against the one really good defense he played. It's easy to turn that into a situation where he makes mistakes against a lot of the better teams on the schedule, and they don't really turn the corner offensively that we thought they were late in the 2020 season. So and combine that with the idea of a pretty remodeled secondary getting hit pretty hard by Clemson in the season opener. That's a pretty straightforward picture of how things could go wrong. I feel good about the offense. I think there's reason to believe that what we saw late last year is real and sustainable. But yeah, it's not hard to paint a picture of how things could go awry.
Next up is Florida, and if you look at the schedule, Bill, they should have a good season. I mean, the only problem is 2 of the top 4 or 5 teams in the country are on that schedule, Bama at home and in Georgia in its usual place. And, of course, they do go to LSU, which is always tricky, and Missouri. I mean, there's some in Kentucky. As I said, it looks like a manageable schedule. I'm now eating my words. Yeah. But, I mean, what are your concerns about this club other than what I just got through reading?
Yeah, the schedule should keep the floor pretty high. I mean, yes, they could get knocked off at Missouri or at Kentucky, but you do look at that and you're thinking, the ceiling's probably, or the floor is probably like 8-4, something like that. But they kind of last season hinted at a higher ceiling, at a brighter future, and it does feel like they're in a situation now where the offense almost has no choice but to regress after what they lost. And we don't really know that the defense has the pieces to take a step forward. It was they couldn't defend the run very well last year. They couldn't leverage opponents into those obvious pass situations where Grantham could send a house. And if the offense gets worse and the defense doesn't get better, that's a worse team. So it does open the door for Georgia for sure, but you look at the schedule and it's really hard to see anything other than like a 9-3, 10-2 finish, you figure.
Yeah, we had somebody on a couple of weeks ago who didn't even have them in the top 25. That upset everybody. I mean, I asked Dan Mullen about it at Media Day. He didn't really seem to care one way or the other. So after Florida, Bill, the real question is who's next? So who do you have?
Yeah, I feel like Kentucky's the most known quantity. Maybe that gives them an advantage. We know what they want to do. They're going to run angry. They're going to be humongous in the trenches. They're going to play pretty good defense, even if they're not as disruptive as they were a couple of years ago. That kind of makes them maybe the safest bet in that regard. But Tennessee, with their total volatility here, without knowing anything about the lineup they're going to field, how the coaching change is going to help or hurt, all the new pieces involved there, they're completely unpredictable to me. Like, from a number standpoint, it looks like about a top 50 team. That's fine, but they could easily be the 3rd or 7th best team in this division, and not a whole lot's going to surprise me. So really it just depends on how risky you're feeling. If you want the safe bet, maybe that's Kentucky. Maybe you can talk yourself into Missouri. You just want to roll the dice and see what happens, and it sounds like Tennessee's your team.
Yeah, I want to follow up on Tennessee because if you look at the schedule, and now here I go with the schedule viewing again. It is not a very difficult schedule. Now again, maybe I'm thinking old Tennessee, not current Tennessee. I mean, Pittsburgh's not a bad team. I don't want to knock the Panthers. At Florida doesn't look good. At Missouri, but winnable games against Bowling Green. I think even Pittsburgh, Tennessee Tech, South Carolina at home, even Ole Miss at home, and then South Alabama and Vanderbilt. I mean, you can cobble together a decent number of wins there to possibly, am I crazy, thinking that they could be, and I can't believe I'm using this phrase because I hate it, become bowl eligible?
Yeah, I mean, I think bowl eligibility is an absolute possibility. I think it basically that schedule can be interpreted in a couple of ways. If they legitimately play at about a top 40 or 50 level, then you're right. I mean, the only definitively losable games are Georgia, Florida, Alabama. Everybody else is beatable, and they could easily, even if they don't win all those games, they could easily get to 7-5 or so. But if they're only like a top 60 team or top 70, they're inconsistent, all the new pieces, they don't play very, consistently week to week, then Pitt, Missouri, Kentucky, Ole Miss, South Carolina is losable. There are really only about 4 sure wins on the schedule. So you figure this is a pretty high ceiling, low floor situation.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.